join with video and then get my computer working.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to get started. We got a nice spread here in the room and online, so it's great to see all of you folks. It's been a few months and nice to be back here with you. My name is Brad Bradford. I'm the chair of the Toronto Music Advisory Committee. The committee secretary has confirmed that we have quorum, so I will call this meeting of TMAC to order, and this is our fourth one of the term here, and again, we are holding this in person in Committee Room 1 at City Hall, as well as the city's WebEx technology, with members and staff connecting by video conference or calling in. Members of the public are welcome to attend this meeting in person or remotely. Because we're meeting in person and remotely, we just ask for everyone's patience as we work through any delays or technical issues. I'd like to remind staff to keep their mics muted with their videos turned off unless they need to answer questions or speak to the committee. And if members wish to ask questions of staff or to speak, please just make sure your video's on, raise your hand, or unmute your mic and indicate your intention, and we'll call upon you. And I'll create a speakers list here. If members wish to place motions on any of the agenda items, we have 4 today, please send the text of your motion in advance to the clerk at tmac@toronto.ca. And when voting on an item or a motion, I'd ask everybody to just turn on your video and raise your hand to indicate your vote. If we have to go down and do a recorded vote, then I'll just ask you to state if you're in favor or opposed. We will start with the land acknowledgement, and although we are in different locations here today, the Toronto Music Advisory Committee acknowledges the land that we're meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. So off the top, we are going to do a confirmation of the previous minutes. May I have a motion to confirm the minutes of the meeting on May 10th, 2024? Okay, Lisa, thank you. All in favor? Hands carried. Very good. And we'll work through the rundown. We have 4 items of business today on the agenda, and the first is Music Advisory, MA 4.1. That is our Toronto Music Advisory Committee task team update. As everyone here is familiar, we have a number of TMAC task teams and spokespersons, and so we have 6, 8, 7 in front of us today. I think just to give everyone a heads up on the sequencing, we'll start with venue health, then new spaces, artist health team 2, which is more affordable housing, general advocacy, general industry health, a couple tables around that. So I'm going to start with venue health. I've got Sean, our vice chair, Tracy, and Lisa. And if there's somebody that wants to kind of give us a quick update on that, I'll turn it over to you, Sean. Good to see you.
Hi, and good to see everybody. So yeah, we've had lots going on in the background in regards to venue health. A note before getting to new licensing, the landscape of Toronto's independent grassroots venues kind of changed radically since our last meeting. Our beloved Phoenix is closing until it finds a new location, and that's a concern for us all, as well as multinational corporations, U.S. hedge funds, and out-of-state real estate holding companies have purchased quite a few independent venues in Toronto over the last year or so. So the landscape is changing, and the actual grassroots independent venue, catalog is shrinking. That's to note. Just there are challenges ahead because like I said, the landscape has very much changed. So noted with more to come in the next meeting. We've also spent the last few years consulting with MLS in regards to new business licensing, and we're happy to report that all that hard work is coming to fruition. New license categories under the Place of Assembly moniker will take place on January 1st, 2025. Venues that have been operating under restaurant licenses will have the opportunity to switch to the new place of assembly license when your current license comes up for renewal. This should alleviate any gray areas in regard to current business licensing, identifying live music venues as such. The program will roll out from January 1st, 2025, with MLS and TMAC providing detailed information prior to and throughout 2025. As part of the new place of assembly license, venues will be required to provide noise control as well as crowd control plan. MLS is working on a standardized form or template that'll make it easier for all venues to add the same correct information when switching to this new licensing. Although the bulk of the work is complete in regards to the new licenses, more detailed information will follow up over the few months. There's some things we're still tying together and making sure they're addressed in regards to insurance and capacity. Yesterday, myself, Mike, and Lisa met with multiple city departments, including fire, zoning, policy planning, and more. I don't remember them off the top of my head. In regards to capacity changes that could potentially be associated with the new license categories, the meeting was very successful in terms of gathering information on the functionality and process of changing capacity. The process involves the city building department, zoning, fire departments in conjunction with the provincial AGCO, as well as the city clerk's office. There's still a few departments, including the AGCO, that we need to gather information from. So we hope to present more detailed information on that at the next TMAC meeting. That's the broad line, the headlines. If there's any questions in regard to any of those items, fire away.
Thanks, Sean. Any questions for Sean on venue health? Councillor Morley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to pick up on the piece that you mentioned around the shrinking independent grassroots venues and some of the interest in I don't want to say monopolization, but some of our friends from the US coming in. I'm just wondering if your group has been putting any thinking into what strategies or opportunities might exist for us as a city, as a committee, to support the retention or support Canadian companies, to come into this area. Just wanted to dig into that a little bit and pick your brain on it.
Yeah, it's something we've been facing over multiple years, and there's no quick, easy solution. The problem is, like any other sector where corporations get larger and larger, you get squeezed out and the competition gets eliminated. So it's a multi-pronged problem that doesn't have an easy question. I think culturally the city needs to understand this. We're getting to the tipping point, and there needs to be some discussions on some sort of support and a plan to move forward. There's like I said, there's no easy answer right now. Yeah, it's happening. It's in real time, so it makes it difficult for grassroots venues to stay competitive and viable.
Very helpful. Thank you. Lots to chew on.
Thank you. Lisa?
I wanted to add a few things to that, and thank you for the question, Councillor. Without mincing words, it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody that Live Nation now owns 6 venues in the City of Toronto, so we might as well just say it and qualify it. It is very competitive for independents of all sizes to be able to operate here. It's also understood that the city has its challenges and that financially support is likely out of the question. But in talking to friends here today, there are things that do get in the way that I'm experiencing right now personally that I feel the city can help with, and that includes things like zoning and land use, and recognizing that more and more I'm hearing from people that live in the city of Toronto that without any amenities, this city is not going to be a very livable place. And a lot of people in the arts are exiting, a lot of people generally are exiting for that reason. So I think that we're dealing, to Sean's point, we're dealing with velocity here. This is, you know, the last, the reality of international venue ownership is within the last decade, and 3 of them within the last year and a half, perhaps. So if we're going to be dealing with, you know, hate to be direct, antiquated approaches that take years, then the independent sector as we know it is not going to exist in the city, and somehow we have to find flexibility to move quicker. Again, I'm dealing with a real-time problem with the Phoenix. I think it would be a travesty that a venue that's been around for 33 years goes away because, for no other reason than it's being blocked because of what I consider to be antiquated policies. I do want to add also to what, you know, Sean had to say about the new entertainment place of assembly, I get that wrong every time, that therein lies an example of something that I think the city will get right with the right coordination. It was quite daunting to be on this call with the various and sundry groups. You kind of needed a roadmap to kind of follow, you know, what fire and building and city planning were all saying. It's a complicated equation, and one that I, you know, recognize that city staff have a really difficult job in navigating. But it is a door that's about to open, and one of the things, speaking of navigating, we've talked about is you know, put together a little bit of a flow chart or roadmap of, okay, we now have this new licensing, and perhaps you can extend your space if you're a restaurant beyond what you're currently doing, or extend your capacity generally to get more people through the door and drive revenue. But it's not, that doesn't happen January 1st, we've learned, and that there are a number of obstacles to get past. Now, some come with financial implications, others don't, but it was an exceptionally helpful yet confusing conversation. And I know you guys deal with this stuff every day, so I applaud you for it because my head wanted to explode. But the good news is, you know, it definitely, I think, like the property tax reduction that this group managed to get moving a few years previously, it is an example of, okay, we at least have a foot in the door, so let's, you know, not try and pry it open, let's push it open and try and get some of these other obstacles out of our way so we can build the existing spaces and then add other spaces that have just been way too restricted. I do want to, and Sean and I didn't have a chance to talk before this call, but I did make a call also to our insurance broker before this meeting, because that was sort of the other thing on the list that we didn't touch on. And what's happening with insurance, at least, and this is something I think a number of people within the industry uses, and including probably in this room. So he's very well versed on our industry. And he did say that with insurance, we are finding that, or he is finding that there are more places to go now. Underwriters like Lloyd's of London, who got out of our sector completely, are back in the sector. So there are other opportunities where during the pandemic there might have been 1 or 2 options, and if they said no, you had no insurance. But what's happening right now is the property component of insurance as opposed to the liquor liability component, meaning that all this flooding in the city is affecting us just like, you know, any other industry, whether you own your property or you lease your property, because often landlords are trying to pass off those costs onto their tenants, or if they own the building, they're getting crushed by property insurance rates as high as $150,000 a year or more, because, you know, those floods were, as everyone knows, no joke. And, you know, it's now this new imbalance of, hey, great news, your liquor liability is coming easier, but good luck getting that property insurance. So still, again, a complicated balance of finding a solution, but the good news overall is there are multiple insurers back in the space in the last 3-4 years, and hopefully that will be helpful. And if we do still have anybody within the TMAC group or any of the venues that are represented by the music office, you know, I can pass on the information with this particular individual to help, because none of the clients he represents at this point are at least without insurance. It may be expensive, but at least they're getting insured.
Thanks, Lisa. Any other questions or comments? Mike Tanner?
Thank you, Councillor Bradford. Just a quick comment, Deputy Mayor Morley, on the issue you raised. You've heard a lot of extra information from Lisa building on what Sean provided. We talk a lot about this here in this committee, but one of the issues around venue sustainability and viability is the fact that among the grassroots venues in Toronto, I think it's very similar to most cities, at least most expensive cities, is a very, very small percentage own the building in which they occupy space. So in that way, they're exactly like a lot of independent businesses in your ward, small coffee shops, bookstores, and the like. So they are very often subject to large economic winds over which they have very little control. So rising land values, pressures of gentrification, et cetera. So Sean and Lisa, I think, are both very wisely focused on elements that may be within city purview, you know, things like the property tax reduction, tweaks around zoning, licensing, some of the new zoning and licensing regulations that'll come in as a result of the night economy work as well. And the last thing I'll close with is I was also on that epically complex call yesterday. It was an interesting one, and I think a very necessary one, but we had fire in buildings and MLS and city planning sort of weighing in on how capacity is determined and whether the new regime, the new framework will change that. And we did talk a lot about creating Lisa used the term a flow chart, a kind of a plain language guide for the public and particularly for business owners to say, well, look, you may be suitable for a new license type, and if you are thinking about making any substantial renovations within your premises and or getting a new license different than the one you have, here's what you may need to know. That could, Margaret and I talked about that really briefly yesterday, that could even be part of the next iteration of the Good Neighbor Guide for late night businesses when it comes out. Probably too late to get it into the version that's due actually next month, but it'll be renovated or revamped again in 2025. And by that point, we'll probably have some clarity around some of this stuff as well.
Awesome. Okay. Anyone online? All good? I will say thanks, Sean. Appreciate the update and the committee's work on that, or sorry, task team. I will throw it to Johnny for new space. An update over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bradford. Appreciate that. To report on the activities of the New Space Task Team, we met on September 4th. During this meeting, we discussed the idea of forming a new not-for-profit organization that could follow the model of a community land trust. This land trust would not be geographically focused, such as the Parkdale Neighborhood Land Trust or the Kensington Market. community land trust, but rather would seek out opportunities citywide for properties suitable for lease or purchase specifically for music or cultural use. And this is in line with one of the recommendations in the Reimagining Music Venues report that I co-authored of establishing a Space for Music Foundation that could be a new charitable organization. The ultimate goal would be to take spaces for performance, rehearsal, and recording out of the commercial real estate market, protecting them from the impacts of rising land values and gentrification that Mike had just mentioned, and ensure their perpetual affordability and accessibility to the community. So we've begun some very preliminary research into this idea, and we'll be contacting organizations such as Tapestry Community Capital, recently helped Hughes Room Live and the Kensington Market CLT launch community bonds programs, as well as the CCFT, or Community and Cultural Spaces Trust in Ward 9, and connecting with members of the Canadian Network of Community Land Trusts. And I should note that some of this exploratory work crosses over with the work of the Affordable Housing Task Team that I'm also a member of, along with Gila and Charlotte. I'm also happy to report that Wavelength, the organization I run, was successful in obtaining a Canada Council seed grant to conduct research into music space needs for a hypothetical new bricks and mortar community music hub, a space that might contain a live music venue alongside rehearsal space or other music related uses. So we'll be doing pre-planning this fall with the aiming of launching the study formally with a community meeting in the new year, a community meeting in the new year, and as well as a survey and 2 focus groups before drafting a small short study to be shared in the spring or summer. I believe that is everything to report from the New Space Task Team, and we look forward to sharing some feedback on the Soundcheck project and some of the other activities happening within the music space. So let me know if anyone from the group has any questions.
Thanks, Johnny, and congratulations on landing that grant. That's great. Any questions for Johnny and the team? Looking in the room.
More of a comment. That a lot of what you outlined there relates to venue health. So I would love to get together and jam on ideas. And yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Like the long-term venue health and new space is all super interconnected.
Yep. Great work. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean.
Beautiful. Anyone else online? Not seeing? Okay. I will say thank you very much for that, Johnny. And again, congrats again. And thanks for the hard work. We'll jump to career development. We've got Amy online to take us through the task team update. Over to you.
Thank you, Councillor Bradford. Good afternoon, everyone. We've got a fairly quick update from our task team. We helped host the Breaking Down Silos event at Hart House on June 26th. I believe most of you were in attendance, so have a good idea of what it was about, but that's one of the big things we're trying to do is break down the silos, connect the industry across the city, across various sectors or aspects. And we received a lot of great feedback on how this went. It felt like it was a fairly casual way to connect and network, but still lightly facilitated. So you weren't just at loose ends trying to meet new people. And of course, I'm giving a short report on this, but I want to make sure that everyone is aware that Jacqueline really did the heavy lifting on this event. The planning and the execution of it was largely on her desk, and we all helped out by showing up, inviting folks, and doing what we could. And we are now kind of looking forward to the rest of this year or early next year. What next can we do to help keep connecting the Toronto music industry? So that's something that's on our list as a task team, whether it's something similar to this Breaking Down Silos event, or whether there's a slightly different format or some different groups perhaps that we want to target bringing together. And another thread that we're looking at is professional development, education, opportunities for industry folks. And so one of the current things that we're looking at are, rather than reinventing the wheel and creating our own workshops and sessions, we're looking to see what other organizations are already doing and perhaps creating a bit of a hub, a resource for folks to find out where they can go for their professional development needs. Because of course, as we all know, we've got to work within capacity of our team and our council as volunteers in this role, and the capacity of the music staff as well, but also trying to maximize the impact on the music community. So that's a high level of what our group has been talking about and what's coming up, but happy to answer any questions or defer to the other task team members if they've got additional input. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Any other questions or feedback on the career development piece? Looking in the room, Deputy Mayor Malik.
I just want to echo the thanks to Jacqueline for the gathering. And it was incredible energy and an incredible kind of set of folks who were sharing the space, and really grateful. And I think that so often it's hard to just kind of hold what the outcomes of that will be, and some of that will continue to reveal itself through the work and engagement that we do together. And I'm sure there will be many exciting and interesting projects that may land at on our table here that will have started and been seeded through those efforts. So just extending my gratitude and echoing what you shared.
Thank you, and I'd add to that, some of you might be aware Jacqueline's on a personal leave right now, and we're all thinking about her and miss her very much, and she did an incredible job with this, and can't wait to have her back. Go. Any other comments, questions? Okay, seeing none in the room, none online. Amy, thanks very much for that, appreciate it. We will jump to the topic of affordable housing, and we have Gila to provide us with an update.
Thank you, Councillor Bradford. This update is on behalf of Johnny, Charlotte, and myself, working with Mike. We are very early in the process of starting a bit of a listen and learn tour to really understand the landscape of affordable housing for artists and musicians more specifically over the next month or so. So really focused. We'll be meeting with a few community land trusts, the Housing Secretariat, Music Ontario, MPD Culture Consultants, Unison, Creative Collisions, and hopefully groups of artists and musicians to really start to understand what is happening or not happening in the city specific to affordable housing for artists, with the goal to work with the music office to produce, if not a robust report, at least a findings document that we could share more broadly and identify opportunities for action. So the ask from the folks in the room and the committee are, if there are groups on your radar that we should add to our list and learn tour, please share them. We're looking to have this underway, like I said, in the next month or so, and have it really focused to come with some updates and recommendations for the next meeting. Thank you.
That would be wonderful. Any questions, comments? Councillor Morley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good to see you, Gila. I was just at the 130 Queens Quay building today on an artist development workforce event that the city was co-hosting, so very appropriate for today's discussion. I just wanted to put the bug in your ear related to cooperatives specific. When we're talking about affordable housing, I know in Etobicoke Lakeshore, we're really proud to host an artist-specific co-op that was built about 30 years ago. It comes with studio space, when you build for a specific niche group, then there's a lot of opportunities. We're talking about lack of venue space and whatever, probably recording space and other things. So I just wanted to throw the idea of sort of an artist-based cooperative model, because we know affordability is a big challenge oftentimes for artists, and we heard a lot about that at the workforce development gathering today. Specifically, intersection of affordability in our city and the sort of gig nature of the work that many artists do creates a sort of unique challenge. And folks are really concerned, or what was shared at that conversation this morning, about the sort of drain of talent that we're going to continue to see out of the city if we're not able to create an environment where folks can, live and thrive and afford to be. So just wanted to share that with you, and thank you guys for the leadership in this good work.
Thank you, Councillor Morley. Really apt point about housing cooperatives, because I know the federal government and CMHC specifically has funding available for co-ops, so that might be one of the potential golden opportunities here. So thank you.
Very good.
Hi, I just wanted to say that there could also be an intersection with some of the work and research that the New Space team is doing on community land trusts as a venue solution. So there might be some opportunity to share what we learned there as well.
Turned it off too soon. Thanks, Kristen. Both Johnny and I are on the New Space task team as well. So a lot of the community land trust discussions, I think it'll be probably one meeting, and we'll invite folks from the other task team to make sure we're all coordinated and not asking folks too much of their time.
Thanks, Kristen. Anyone else checking online? Not in the room? Okay, very good. Thanks for that, Hila. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to hear that conversation goes this next month. We will jump to promotion and tourism. I see Sarah Jarvis online, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. I'm just bringing two updates to this group. First being some results on the Music Compass initiative that Destination Toronto and the City of Toronto partnered on. Some of you will recall a presentation that Alok gave at the last meeting or 2 meetings ago. But happy to say it's been very well received. If you haven't seen, there's decals on sidewalks across the city that ask the question, love music, and there's a QR code that leads passerbys to various pages on the Destination Toronto website that indicate a fairly detailed description of the neighborhood's music scene, along with a host of listings for surrounding area music related businesses. There are this pilot was executed in 9 different neighborhoods. There are decals in 10 different intersections along in those neighborhoods, as well as 8 other very high traffic areas in the city. And there are decals outside every business that was included in the program. So far, we've seen about 10,300 views connecting to that content, which reflects about 3,500 users. I've got many more stats for those people that are interested, but some fun facts. The parent page that encompasses all of the information continues to have the highest number of users, mostly because those are that's the connected link to those high traffic areas. Chinatown Kensington Market has the highest number of page views as far as neighborhoods go, followed by Broadview Danforth, which has overall number of views per active user. I think much of that is to do with the fact that Mike Tanner and myself will live in that neighborhood. We're continuing to monitor the results of this pilot. I believe we're looking at extending it into November to capitalize on the Taylor Swift concert and all of the visitors that are coming in, but I'm not sure if that's officially confirmed yet, but we're looking into that. And I will move on to the next part, which is, of course, Taylor Swift. So Destination Toronto is working closely with the City of Toronto on how to best welcome the influx of Swifties to our city during the fortnight in November. Cue the lyric Easter egg there. So Destination Toronto is building an actual microsite. It will be embedded within our existing site with dedicated content that will highlight both the critical need to know information for visitors, including transportation, bike share, how to get to and from the venue, et cetera, as well as more editorial focused information, suggested itineraries of things to do in Toronto, all of the various Taylor themed events that are being programmed, as well as a calendar plugin of all events that are happening in Toronto, not just the Taylor related ones. So in terms of how to get that information in front of visitors, we are going to sort of emulate the pilot concept with the Music Compass and actually have printed decals with QR codes leading to that microsite. They will be displayed around the concert venue in high traffic areas along the pathways of the visitor arrival journey. So we're working with Rogers Center, Union Station, TTC, Metrolinx, both airports on strategic placements of this QR code and looking at as well as physical decals, adding that into various digital displays along the path. And that is my update.
Thanks very much, Sarah, any questions? Lisa.
How do we get the Taylor Swift plan? Because a lot of us probably have programming that tie into it, and it's a great idea, by the way, and thanks for doing all that work. Yeah, we have countdowns ourselves that could probably take advantage of all your marketing work.
Absolutely. So we have a form where we're asking businesses, we're casting this far and wide. So please, I'll share it with this group and we'll share it beyond that. Anyone who is programming anything Swift related to share that back through that form, as well as if it's an event specific activity, then adding that to our events calendar. We have a Taylor Swift category tag on that, so you can just make sure that that's captured in there. So between those two pathways, making sure that our team is aware of all the various activities that are happening so that we can share that back through that microsite.
Great tool. Mike's going to jump in here.
I just want to say Sarah Jarvis will probably be at every one of those Taylor Swift themes activities. She's the biggest Swiftie in any room that she's in.
Well, I was going into this. I'm not sure if I will be coming out of it.
Labor of love. Any other questions for Sarah?
Tracy?
Yes.
I just wanted to make a mention of the QR codes that were placed around the sidewalks at the venues. I've seen people stopping and using them. It's a very cool idea. I'd like to see it continued. And maybe switched up and changed up, put some inside the venues, put cross-referencing other venues, etc. I've seen it in action, and it looked to be successful. So good work, and let's retool it and keep using it and extend it longer, if possible.
Thanks, Sean. Yeah, I think we're coming together in October to sort of assess and decide next steps on that. I should say that in addition to the businesses that are within walking area of that specific QR code capture, the calendar of events is also listed there. So it does encourage folks to go and explore music events that are happening through the calendar.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Sean. Question from Tracy or comment here in the room?
Yeah, I was just also going to say that we've seen a lot of activity outside of Lula Lounge, people paying attention to the QR code, and we've had some people call saying that they found us that way. So thank you very much.
That's great. That's the part where we don't necessarily have a line of sight on, but the city will likely conduct a survey afterwards to see what the feedback has been from the businesses that are a part of the pilot, because those are the stories we need. That's the goal, is conversion. So thanks for that feedback. That's good to hear.
It's working. Anyone else? Very good. Thanks for that, Sarah, and best of luck with the big push here in November. We're going to jump to our last table, advocacy and partnerships. We've got Jeremy here in the room with an update.
Hi, can you hear me? Yep. Yes, so I'll just give a brief update about some of the things we've been up to. Early in the summer, our task team met with RBC to discuss some of the challenges the music industry is facing, and it was kind of them to listen to our feedback and operational methods that they weren't, they're more used to maybe the film industry. So coming from the music industry, they were able to understand our unique points of view, which they don't always hear. So that was nice for Mike to set that up. Additionally, I'm working on an initiative for my own company with Alpha Theta, Pioneer DJ, and DJ Monitor to implement a music reporting technology in Toronto-based venues to automatically report music track plays. And if this pilot is successful, it will greatly improve distribution of music performance royalties that are currently collected, and it'll spread it to more producers, artists, labels in the music industry, including many smaller, upcoming, often overlooked artists that aren't being played on the radio and are only played in venues. So this technology, in my opinion, is super important. And this technology is already being used in the UK, Australia, and the Netherlands pretty extensively, so it's something that we can bring here. The update since the last meeting is that we have implemented it in one Toronto venue as a trial, and we hope to bring on more venues during our pilot period over the next few months. And if there's any venues looking to participate, I encourage you to reach out. And I'm hoping to put together a meeting, an open information session with Alpha Theta and interested venue participants and members of this committee if they want, and we can all discuss I can go over in more detail how it works and how it can help the venues. And there is no cost to participate, so it's just kind of a win-win.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeremy. Any questions, comments? Looking in the room? Looking online? All right. Well, thanks for the update. I guess formally, any speakers to the task team items as a whole beyond what we've done already? Okay. Yep. Councillor Morley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just kind of building off of the advocacy and partnerships work, which is great, and congratulations, that technology does sound really cool, so I'm excited to see where that goes. But I also just wanted to ensure that as we come up to budget season, I'm thinking of Sean and the new venue team and Johnny and some of the work that's been discussed around shrinking independent venues. I don't know, again, what the solution is as we talked about, but I do understand there's a number of opportunities the city can be continuing to think about. I think the land trust opportunity is really exciting. And I would just encourage consideration. I know this is our formal advisory committee, and that information we're here, we're listening, it'll flow through. But I do think that the budget consultations that will be upcoming in November, December are a great opportunity to also socialize the importance of this reality for venues and the importance of it for us as a very culturally diverse and bustling city with so much talent that we want to retain here. So just again, kind of thinking about how some of the work that we're doing can be championed and advocated for at that table for budget, because we all know money makes the world go round. And although we are very tight, we do have, need to continue to invest in our priorities. So I just wanted to put that on the table. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Morley. Okay, hearing no further speakers, I just need a motion to, what do we do with this? Receive the item? Receive for information. Councillor Morley, all in favor? Carried. Wonderful. All right, item 1 in the books. We move on to MA 4.2. We've got our friends from City Planning assembling at the front of the room here. They're going to give a brief presentation on ideas for a study exploring potential policies to support what we were just talking about, the preservation of existing music spaces and encouraging new models for performance and presentation. So we're going to get them connected.
I can get us started while we're...
Turn it over to Willie.
Yeah. So good afternoon. Thank you very much for letting us join you. My name is Willie McRae. I'm the manager for community planning for the south section of downtown, which is predominantly Ward 10. With me is some of my colleagues, Kashmita Arora, Colin Wolfe, and John Holmesy. Over my last 6 years in this position, lots of music issues have crossed my desk, and I really enjoyed hearing some of the dialogue here, because I think a lot of what we're going to show you today will hopefully resonate and reflect some of the challenges that you guys are dealing with as well. in our business, as was alluded to, I think, Lisa, it's a complicated business when you think of our official plan and the zoning bylaw and licensing and different definitions. Certainly a lot of music issues have crossed my desk. Thinking about the Matador, for those of you who recall that venue, the Silver Dollar and the reincarnation of the Silver Dollar, the Paddock at Bathurst and Queen, which was lost, Sneaky D's, where we have an application right now looking to replace it. Mike has many ideas, and we thought that there's maybe some attributes and learning that we can bring to the table here that will hopefully reflect and respond to some of the issues that you're grappling with. So we thought we'd look into how we can assist with this great moniker Soundcheck. We might need to work on that. But the idea of putting together a multidisciplinary, interdivisional team to be able to engage with a variety of stakeholders across different jurisdictions. This is very much early days. This is the first kind of formal introduction to some of the work we've been doing. But really we want to just set a bit of a context for what we're going to do, and then hopefully get your blessing with a motion that would go on to Economic Development Committee and on to City Council. Thanks to Deputy Mayor Malik for the informal discussion on this topic yesterday and for her addition to the motion. This is not typical work we do in community planning. We deal with development reviews. We deal with developers and we deal with new buildings, but this is kind of a fun topic for us. So the ability to infuse this into our regular work was an exciting opportunity. And if the truth be told, I think the opportunity to work with a living legend rock star in the room, Mike Tanner, was sort of an added bonus for us. So that's the real motivating factor. So I'll turn it over to my colleagues, and then happy to have... I don't want his head to grow too big, but super excited to be here to present this and happy to answer questions and comments you have afterwards.
Thanks for that, Willie. Glad to be here. My name's Colin Wolf. I'm a senior planner. I've been excited to work on this file for many years. Between my colleagues and I, we've had quite a few music files going across our desks. And also in this circle here, we have musicians as well. So apart from our roles as planners, I think as people, we want to have fun and we want to see this kind of sector grow. So very excited to be here. So just starting to set the context a little bit, I don't think I have to make the case to this group of Toronto's outsized contribution to the music landscape. I think a lot of recent work has really set the stage for what that means for economic activity and what it does from an economic perspective. I think what we're especially interested in as a part of this project is the community benefits that you see from these kind of community hubs that are emerging from music venues and this people celebrating the city, coming together, a diverse spectrum of fans and professionals. It's a healthy thing for our city, and it's part of the reason I think people want to be in a large city. So that's something we're especially interested in. But we also acknowledge that there's a lot of fragility out there within this sector, as you'll see in the next slide, around land values, development, gentrification, but also land consolidation. So there's no shortage of issues in front of us. So the real reason we're in front of you today is these kinds of headlines I think hit us hard in planning, given what we see coming forward in development applications and news like this rolling out. So we've got, I think, a collective interest across divisions to want to do something about this. So what I would say the goals are for our little initiative, again, it's in its early days, or it's about increasing protections and retaining music spaces. Live music venues, I should say, as well as growing and creating flexibility for new ones to emerge. That's what we're most interested in here. And after some conversations we had earlier on this morning, what makes this different from a lot of the various progress that has come from this group and other city divisions is this has a very specific focus on live music venues and building on a lot of that previous work. So I think we're really excited to have that focus on live music venues in this particular initiative. So as I was alluding to before, lots of really exciting things coming forward. Very recently, we heard the property tax reduction. That's a big win for the music industry mentioned earlier on today, as well as agent of change principles and ongoing work with the nighttime economy zoning. And we have some new economic action plans coming forward as well that are in stream. So we're very interested on building on those, knowing that it's a process, right? A lot of those gains, there's always future follow-on work. And as I mentioned before, there's a few of these pieces that we can be working alongside with as they develop. So looking forward to doing that. We're not the experts by any means from planning's perspective, but we see ourselves in a kind of a coordinating go-between role between the various divisions to try to cut through the significant amount of regulations that we've heard brought up a few times today. So I'm not going to read through all the council direction, but I think this paints a picture that everything we're seeing from recent council decisions, that this indicates an interest from elected officials and from our various committees and bodies, and we see that as encouraging to go forward and try to get a motion to get some direction to pull together an interdivisional team. So there's a lot of interest from council. So the fun stuff with existing regulations, I think the focus of what we're trying to do is centered on what's in the city's purview to look at. But when we're hearing broader ideas, I don't see that being a limitation necessarily on what we do and what we can plug into. But I'd say our main focus is on these regulations that we as a broader city family can affect and hopefully introduce some flexibility in. And with that, I'll hand that over to John.
Hi. So one of the main issues that we kind of found was lack of property ownership and a lot of butting heads in between property owners and venue operators. Other issues we've noticed was, limited tools that the city has in kind of controlling that type of issue, on top of economic pressures exerted on venues and operators. And one of the main questions that we're looking for is how can we reverse that trend, create conditions for that ecosystem to flourish within the city of Toronto specifically. We have a couple case studies that we've kind of brought forward that we think kind of highlight a lot of these issues, and they all kind of face very similar issues. So we have, for example, the Phoenix, which you've heard of earlier today, where there were butting heads between the landowner and the venue operators. There was lack of protections and levers for cultural institutions, impacts of the pandemic, ownership and tenure issue, rent and operating costs. As well as that, we have the silver dollar, which was kind of an interesting case where it was saved, but at the moment is underused. And then a noteworthy, kind of worthwhile adjacent case study that we figured would be worth mentioning is Review Cinema. It's worth noting that privately that has been solved between, I believe, the landowner and the actual operators of Review Cinema, but I think it's worth bringing up because they've faced very similar issues that a lot of the venues that we're looking at today seem to face, that being particularly economic pressures. Some of the specific areas we're looking to kind of expand on and we're hoping to bring to you guys for a discussion would be how to expand and deepen existing initiatives, what types of protections we could deal with or we could bring forward in terms of policies and incentives, how to support existing infrastructure as a whole, so kind of painting the background picture, that being rehearsal space, DIY space, flex space, alternative venue spaces, and an idea of looking at future forward venues, so something where we may not know the exact operating model of venues as they kind of come forward, but how can we set the stage so that they're able to flourish properly? We've identified a few potential stakeholders. Again, this is very early days, so we're still kind of looking to expand this list. But from what we've seen, the city stakeholders, private stakeholders, institutional stakeholders, and working groups are kind of, it's ideal if we can all kind of work together to push this forward. And then passing this back to Colin.
Thanks, John. So where we are today is, so we've tested out this idea quite a bit with our friends at Economic Development. We're hoping to continue those efforts going forward. And I think the moment to talk to this group is exciting for us so early in the process to get some of your feedback before we take it to broader to more councillors to get start getting a little bit more buy-in for what we're hoping is a motion to come forward to direct staff to strike an interdivisional team to start identifying these issues. We don't have solutions coming forward now. We're trying to scope what we're looking at. So that's the journey we're looking forward to, we're looking to work through to the end of this year. So what you see on the screen, I'm not sure if it's been circulated yet, is our draft motion to council. Really interested in any further refinements to this. That can kind of help scope our work and get the buy-in that we need to do this. So maybe we could flash it on screen later after members have a chance to opine. And we're going to close out with a few questions that are on the top of our mind at this stage in the game, an early stage. meaning that can you suggest some key issues that we may or may not have captured? What are other stakeholders that we need to build into our circle? And any input on scope of how the kind of the breadth of this study and what it might result in would be also very helpful to us going forward. So within that in mind, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Colin. Thanks, team. Any questions for staff? Any comments on this?
Looks like a great initiative. You've roped in all the things that we are being challenged with now. Something I talked to Mike Tanner about ad nauseum is the different speed that City Hall and business world works. They're on different cycles, including as many people, stakeholders, independent venue owners as you can right now at this stage. And I won't speak for Lisa, but I'm sure you've spoken with her, but I would be happy to spend significant time on this because it looks like a great initiative.
Probably going to rope you in, Sean. Thanks. I'll go Deputy Mayor Malik and then Councillor Morley.
Yeah, I just have a couple of questions. Again, want to echo the thanks for the presentation and for bringing this to us. I guess I'd like to hear to what extent there's been consideration of patrons, users, enthusiasts, champions of live music venues, the folks who are visiting, and how they're going to be considered in this. And then I guess, and maybe it's in here, but to hear a little bit more about what the engagement might be with property owners. I know that one of the conversations that has come up with planning, it's something that Councillor Bradford has given leadership to as well, is looking at alternative uses to office and commercial space, and to what degree that can be part of the considerations when you're looking at the future, the viability, the ownership and long-term kind of certainty for live music venues.
Appreciate the questions, Deputy Mayor. On the users piece, we're all well aware of some of the findings from the wavelength study, which had quite a few sections, quite a bit of a focus on users and the user experience. And so some of the takeaways we've had there is that the overall demand, especially since the pandemic, what struck me is there seems to be more of a willingness than ever and an appetite for this kind of stuff. But in terms of how we're cornering them as a stakeholder group, I think that's something we still have to cut through. But I appreciate the comment that they're one of the most important stakeholders that we can consider here. So we should give that a bit more thought in terms of how we're building that in and that kind of feedback. But we know that comes to the fore from some recent reports that have been helpful. On your second question on property owners, my sense at this point is that depending on the suite of issues and potential solutions that come forward as we initiate the work, property owners, once we have a better picture of what the opportunities and the challenges are, I think that's when a property owner's strategy comes in. Once we have a better baseline of specific things we're wanting to hear from them or ideas we want to advance. So I see that as a kind of a next step, whereas the users, I think, should be built in as soon as possible. And any ideas on how to incorporate fans and fan base into a study like this would be welcomed.
Thanks.
Sorry, I have one more question. Maybe this goes to what you had just shared. And there was an excellent panel that Mike Tanner was on around how, music cities and the kind of future of live music venues, not just in Toronto, but in other jurisdictions. Are there, even just, anecdotally or just from your scan, other jurisdictions that you're curious to look more closely at, or who have provided a pathway or a model that we can learn more from through this process? Or is it that we're kind of creating something pretty novel here and we want to do that ourselves?
Yeah, thanks for the comment. I think it didn't come up in our presentation, but certainly, and this has been in consultation with Mike, but there are some best practices around the world, stuff in Brisbane, stuff in the UK, things across Canada, ideas from the US. So a kind of cross-jurisdictional scan will be part of this work. Knowing that there's not going to be one solution that's the panacea for, the issues that we're facing and that the music industry is facing. So I think certainly an international scan is going to be part of the work.
And my colleague John is flagging a few others for me on Calgary and Edmonton are doing some really interesting work, as well as Vancouver with some of their cultural, I believe that they had the cultural heritage designation or different suites of that. So we know Vancouver's doing that, and there's some interesting work emerging in Calgary and Edmonton that we're looking for.
Thanks. I'll go Councillor Morley and then Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation and the great work. Very exciting stuff. I just wanted to understand how we are thinking about and approaching the different types of creative spaces. Obviously, live music venues are critically important. It's something we're hearing needs to be protected and supported. I'm also curious about how planning is approaching other types of infrastructure that supports creation, development, production, recording. I was really interested. I was visiting a site, a purpose-built rental site in the downtown near Distillery, and they had a production studio built into their building that was freely accessible for people who lived in the building. And I thought that was super cool. I don't know if that was just like an initiative of the developer or if that was something that was secured through the planning process. But just also understanding how many of us consume, music and entertainment isn't always live and in person, which, regretfully, that's mostly my life these days. But just wondering how we're thinking about those kinds of spaces and ensuring they're scattered around the city and accessible. Or if that's part of your scope of work, maybe not, and no worries if it isn't.
So when looking through all of this stuff, one thing we are definitely considering is kind of the background that feeds into live music, right? So musicians, for example, need rehearsal space in order to actually rehearse and then play the stuff. So that's not something, again, at this point, it's very early stages. We haven't really set anything in stone for that, but that is well within our consideration. Like that was within the conversation that we had pretty early on. That was something that we brought up early on, trying to figure out how to loop it in there.
I would maybe just quickly add to that, as I think in Deputy Mayor Malik's ward is the It's Okay studio, which is not, it's a live music venue, but it's as much a cultural hub, really, and it's a thing where it's a space where all kinds of really interesting activities, ideation, recording, graphic design, and yes, concerts and events like Venus Fest this weekend happen. So it's a little bit of a blend of activities, and that kind of thing I think this team here will find really interesting in these inquiries.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. And you just triggered a thought for me, so I'll just add one more comment. And the reason why I think I'm focused in that area as well, in Etobicoke Lakeshore, we were really lucky in the early 2000s to have a little small space, a quarter the size of this room, and it initially hosted a idea of local young people called Inner City Visions. That was a recording space, artists came through, and some of the most successful and impactful artists in our city were really incubated in some of those hyper-local, hyper-accessible, very small and intimate kind of spaces to produce and to create. And that evolved into the Remix Project, which I think most people are familiar with, which also had and continues to have an incredible impact on the music and culture scene in our city. And so just really want to speak to the importance of, outside of the large public, live music venues, the importance of those incubation spaces citywide and making sure that they're accessible to all members of the community to grow and share their talent and hopefully pursue a career in it. So just leave you with that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Morley. Lisa.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. Really appreciate your interest in this space. Hurry up, please. A couple things just wanted to mention as you asked, maybe what additionally could be included in this document. One is, it was actually Councillor Bradford that taught me the term that I use pretty much daily right now, and that is meanwhile spaces. And the fact that with development slowing, recent reports about it being the condo market pretty much just being the worst since 1990, and developers going bankrupt at record rates, that there are spaces that are on hold, or development is in the midst of a process for land use discussions, whatever it may be. Meanwhile, to me, used to mean 2-3 years, and I'm discovering as I scout the city that it can mean, 10, 20, 30 in one case. And so that might just be digging deeper into what you're working on already, but to me, it's actually a potential separate category, because our use, at 10 years would be absolutely fine. Definitely not in the case of, a developer that is looking at developing residential or commercial. The other thing I just wanted to mention as we talk about sort of our version of mixed use, and, something that councillors have brought up in terms of, mixing up the usage within a cultural hub. We're also having discussions with film in Toronto, as Marguerite and Mike are aware, that there's some commonalities there in terms of large unobstructed spaces that have been soundproofed, that are not necessarily right in the core of downtown, but close enough where things like dealing with noise abatement or crowd control, all those things get sort of mitigated, and that there are the possibilities to have mixed use, within cultural groups, and not just thinking about, well, this could also be a recording studio and a live space, that as very much a cultural city, and one that has been extremely successful and brought in a huge amount of revenue in multiple areas of culture, that if we could look to that within, your findings, that would be helpful.
Thanks for that feedback, Lisa. Yes.
Hi. First of all, thank you again for presenting today. On the topic of stakeholders who may have been left out of your initial survey, I just wanted to give a special consideration to some of the larger community-based, specifically percussion groups. Last count in Toronto, I think there's at least 6 of them, representing probably over 150 members, one of which I am in. So speaking from personal direct experience, we've struggled since 2020. Actually, one of the headlines that you used was the space that we used to rehearse in on Geary Avenue. And since then, it's been very precarious, our rehearsal situation. And there are some special considerations, like we need storage, the space needs to be very large. And I feel like it's a little bit outside of the typical rehearsal space needs. So just a plug for that as a consideration.
Thanks, Kristen. Yes, Benjamin. Thank you. Okay, Johnny, we'll jump online and over to you, and then we'll come back into the room. Apologies.
Thanks. I couldn't see if there was a raise hand function in WebEx, so I was going analog. Great presentation. Great to see you all again, and great to meet you, and great to see you again, Willie. This is really exciting. A really exciting project. I'm glad to see the passion and enthusiasm coming from planning and understanding for the importance of the live music sector and the unique challenges we face. I like the fact that you've scoped it around both preservation of existing spaces and the opportunity to create new spaces. That does really align with the first 2 task teams that presented today, venue health and new space. So it does seem like there's a real natural opportunity for collaboration here. So I'm definitely, speaking both, wearing both my new space task team hat and also my wavelength hat, and researcher hat. I'm definitely very willing to get involved and take part in whatever way I can and share whatever knowledge I can. I appreciate you referencing wavelength study. And yes, this definitely does reflect a lot of the findings of our studies, which is the main challenges of the live music sector are economic, the low margins, the lack of ownership. Those are the primarily the real market misfunction you see within live music. So was a real one key finding of our reimagining music venue study. But at the same time, there's also a lot of value placed in these spaces, their cultural value, their what they add to the diversity of communities, and also like the hunger for innovation and experimentation, but not really in a tech sense. We didn't really see a lot of interest in virtual reality integration in venues. People want to see the traditional performance venue experience, but more of it and better and safer and more accessible. So I see this as being really positive, and I'm here to support in whatever way I can.
Thanks, Johnny. Okay, we'll go Benjamin and then Jeremy.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Willie and the team, for an excellent presentation. And yeah, definitely your passion for this topic really shines through, and we're really glad to have all of your minds on this particular topic. You'd asked for feedback on 3 points. One were issues, stakeholders, and input on scope. So I just wanted to respond to some of those items. So one of the issues I thought perhaps could be useful would be to look at also the employment ramifications of this. As you know, as we lose these really important community artifacts from our music scene, they're very hard to get back. They're very hard to recreate. They take years, decades to recreate these spaces. So once they're gone, it's very hard to bring them back. These spaces also represent employment opportunities for existing professionals in the industry, but also all the new graduates that are coming out of numerous programs that are offered in the City of Toronto. So the next generations of entrepreneurs, innovators will need these spaces to find employment and also find ways of unlocking their own innovation. So that leads me to some of the stakeholders that you might wish to consider. Academic institutions like George Brown College, the Harris Institute, Metalworks, and even the Royal Conservatory of Music, University of Toronto. These would be great stakeholders and great partners because they're producing hundreds of graduates that are going to need these spaces for their own use, for their own employment, and their future life in the City of Toronto. Input on scope, I mentioned the preservation of these venues, and we've talked about this throughout the session today. Definitely the preservation would be a topic, but I'd also look at ways of unlocking additional revenue streams for these facilities so that way they can diversify, they can hedge, and they can have more options available to them in order to respond to market trends, challenges in sort of challenges in the environment which prevent their core revenue stream from being realized. Also looking at ways of unlocking those revenue streams would be hybrid spaces. So when I was a kid growing up in a neighborhood called the Annex, there were a lot of these spaces that had artist lofts on the upper floors and then sort of a gallery space or a multi-purpose space on the main floor. So they had housing or creative space for Torontonians that could then demonstrate their art in the same facility in which they were living or in which they were creating. So hybrid space, I think, could be a great scope item along with the preservation of existing infrastructure. Thanks very much. Oh, and I'm here to help throughout the study, anything you need, I'm here to support it.
Great feedback. Thanks for that, Benjamin. Jeremy.
Yeah, I agree with, thank you for the presentation. I agree with everything everyone said so far. And yeah, my point was just that I think it kind of bounces off what Lisa was saying, and that there's areas of the city that could be sort of unlocked, and there's different ways of doing that. And so I guess your study probably will get into that. But as someone that owns a larger space in, let's say, an industrial area could rent it to one person for the night, or a space could be used as a multi-use space. There's some around that have in other cities and in Toronto that Sometimes they are fashion shows, sometimes they're art shows, sometimes they're photography studios, and sometimes they're concert venues. And all those revenue streams allows that place to survive across multiple different areas. Sometimes they're film too, rents them out. And so I don't know if there's a special zoning for that, but a lot of times those are in maybe an industrial area or a bigger space that can just be used. And that might be something, I think that would be helpful for newer businesses to use without all the stress of owning a large venue right off the bat, right? That's how you get started. So yeah, that's my point. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy. I'm going to jump to Melissa online, and then I'll go to Hila.
Hi there. I just wanted to thank the group for such an actually a really inspiring presentation. I feel like you know, as somebody with a degree in urban studies, so much of my initial lens was through how cities don't really function if there isn't something to sonify them. So it's nice to hear a lot of interest and a lot of close personal stakes. And I think maybe just to jog the memory of this group a little bit, that I feel like a study of this nature a couple of years ago would feel like there was something missing if we weren't thinking deeply about the use of different DIY spaces in the city. And since then, I feel like there's been this really remarkable pivot with a lot of DIY collectives thinking about how they can utilize pre-existing spaces. Also, can everybody hear me okay?
We got you.
Okay, good. I'm getting this funny feedback loop through the headphones and the listening, so I just want to make sure you guys can hear me. Yeah, a lot of, I think, just really incredible DIY collectives in the city, some of which are represented in different ways in this group, have found really incredible ways to partner with pre-existing physical spaces. And I'm thinking of a lot of great programming going on at the Allen Gardens recently. And if there's room in the study to incorporate how some of those personal relationships and partnerships end up just really broadening the scope of what constitutes a live music venue, and thinking about how some of those may be under-acknowledged or spaces that are underutilized for the purpose of music might also be considered with a similar degree of scrutiny and intensity.
So another thing that we'd been looking at just in our initial research was exactly that. So DIY spaces and unconventional venues. So that's something that we're certainly intending on continuing to kind of look into to see how we can facilitate that. I mean, anecdotally, I've been to shows and seen shows at Legion halls and churches, which are fantastic examples of spaces that may not be a conventional music venue, but are pretty easily accessible for organizers to put something on there. So that's a topic that we definitely intend on continuing to research and implement one way or another.
Thank you, and thanks for the commentary, Melissa. We'll jump to Hila in the room here.
Thank you. Thanks so much for the opportunity to weigh in early in the process. In terms of scope, one of the things I didn't see come through, and perhaps you're touching on it separately, is city-owned spaces and sort of understanding that inventory, whether it's from Create-TO or commercial real estate, particularly as it relates to new development where, you know, through Section 37 agreements of past, developers have had to make spaces available, you know, often whole floor podiums, and what's happening to those uses. Do they have opportunities to be these live music venues, community hubs, DIY spaces? So really understanding both what's available and what the process is for small independent groups, not-for-profits, to engage with the city on those. It makes me think particularly of, you know, RFPs going out from Create-TO for new communities. Where's there an opportunity to create some of this social infrastructure that's going to go into those new communities? And is that called out more specifically if the city takes an intentional view to some of this. So really would like to see that in the report. I think in terms of both scope and stakeholders, I know we had adjacent property owners up there, but understanding the future of our city is very much mixed use. And with my developer hat on personally, where do real estate developers fit into this? And what resources, guides are even available. We know that to do this well and to mitigate some of the issues we've had traditionally, we need to think of this really early on in the development process, both from a planning perspective, but also from a construction perspective, and isolating uses and vibration mitigation and all that stuff. So I think there's absolutely, as part of this or as a spin-off, there's some kind of resource guide or how-to for developers, not just in how to work with this segment of the community in the city, but how to physically go about this in terms of, what do you need to disclose to purchasers, to tenants, to commercial partners, to neighbors? How do you need to approach construction? And really thinking about this in that sort of mixed use context as opposed to single use spaces.
Thanks for that, Hila. Any other questions, comments? Looking online? All right. Anyone want to speak to the item?
Thank you very much. And thank you again for the presentation, for pulling this together, for taking, I guess what I can describe as a holistic view to this challenge. We know, as you described, the challenges, the issues, and the many players in making this something that can be comprehensively approached and from a number of different angles. And I really do appreciate the responsiveness of including the relationship with what you bring forward to the new action plan for Toronto's culture sector and the new action plan for Toronto's economy. And I do have a motion, just building on the response to my question earlier. It's very modest, but it recognizes audiences in the consideration. So to work with industry stakeholders, venue operators, and engage audiences to inform potential strategies identified, and to ensure that they are factored into the work going forward. Again, really looking forward to this. This is, as I have shared and have been in conversations and at the table with many folks who are part of this committee and folks who are outside of it as well. Live music venues were part of my first engagement at the very start of my term, as we were understanding how to prepare and ensure that the city's interests and the interests of live music venues and operators and audiences were considered as part of the Ontario line construction. And really grateful to Mike Tanner and the Music Office for allowing us to hold that space and that table and ensure that the recommendations that we ultimately had from the Ontario Line Subcommittee did include those considerations about construction impacts, about the disruption that comes from that sort of deep boring and that sort of work that happens, and how we can have better communication and consideration for live music venues. So there's a number of angles to this. It's been a really important priority to me. I'm so proud that Spadina Fort York is home to so many live music venues. We want them to continue, not just to survive, but to thrive, to be able to evolve, to meet the needs of our communities, and to make sure that we're kind of managing all the different ways that we live, work, and enjoy our downtowns especially. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Malik. Any other comments? Hi, Johnny. Over to you.
I just had one last thought while I'm listening to everyone's amazing feedback and thoughts on this, and responding to the energy of this present that we're all feeling in response to this presentation, the amazing ideas and energy. I think it's important to remember that our sector is very under-resourced, that venue operators and grassroots music organizations are very under-resourced in comparison to other aspects of the creative industries. And it's important, it's great to have the city as a partner, and that's really encouraging. But I think that an element of this study that I'd like to see addressed is how we can empower the sector to build its revenue and build its capacity in order to see these transformative projects actually happen.
Thanks for that, Johnny. Any other questions? Okay, I will move the motion here then, and then I think we'll vote on it in this first and then the amendment? Yes. Okay, and this is, pardon me? Okay, so I'm introducing the motion here, and this was some of the pieces that the staff had teed up in their presentation. So I will move that motion, and thanks everyone for their hard work and all the feedback that we've gotten on this, moving in the right direction. Okay, so we will vote on this first. Okay. Want to display that on the screen? Oh, okay. All in favor? Carried. The amendment? All opposed? Okay. Yeah, no opposed. That carries. And then the amendment to add audiences, engage audiences. All those in favor? Opposed? Nobody? That carries. Great. Right. Thank you very much. And thank you for that discussion, everybody. I appreciate that. For item 3, we're going to get some updates here from staff on new and ongoing music office work, and turn that over to Mike.
Can I just interrupt for 1 sec? Just on the last item, just thank you very much for your feedback. And I almost feel this is the first of potential several interactions with this committee, both formally and informally. So really appreciate the work. We have to be wary of scope, acknowledging Lisa's comments that we need to do it quickly, but we also have a lot of work to do. So we're going to try to balance that. But thanks very much for your input. Really much appreciated.
Thanks, Willie. Thanks,
yeah, well done. Thank you, Councillor Bradford, and I'll start off, I'll keep this fairly brief, but I'll start off by saying, because I'm working so closely with Kashmita, John, Colin, and Willie on this, I can certainly be a point of contact between this committee and the various task teams. As Johnny pointed out, there's a lot of adjacency between the mandate of these task teams and some of the things that have been discussed, and the work that's planned as part of the Soundcheck project. So you can expect to hear from me teeing up some of these follow-up conversations. So I just wanted to update members on some of the things that have been going on since the last meeting, which was in May, involving the music office, involving economic development and culture, and involving various members here. First of all, as many of you know, we have been quite involved with the ongoing work around the night economy initiatives. That is led by my colleagues in the Visitor Economy Office, which is Alok Sharma and team. The music office is involved, particularly in working with municipal licensing and standards and planning on the implementation of the new zoning and licensing framework that will affect bars, restaurants, and entertainment venues. As many of you know, that's due to begin coming in January of 2025, and what we're hearing from MLS and planning is that it will be a gradual rather than sudden and dramatic process, the implementation of this, and there's a lot of stakeholder communication that's planned actually for the next few months from MLS and from planning. Certainly the music office will be involved in that as well with respect to live music venues on what the new zoning and licensing will affect in terms of flexibility, where certain uses can occur, what implications there may be on license type and other details. there have been meetings with the venue task team, for example, here, Tracy and Lisa and Sean and the implicated divisions. There are also, as some of you know, external and internal working groups around night economy. The internal working group includes representatives from all the divisions that you would expect. Fire, buildings, planning, municipal license standards, paramedics, Toronto Public Health, Office of Emergency Management, and the like. The external working group has a lot of different stakeholders as well, including some entertainment stakeholders, but also including harm reduction organizations and residents associations and other stakeholders who have interest in how the night economy develops. That external working group is chaired by our night economy champion, Councillor Ainsley. Meetings are quarterly. Both groups are working adjacent to one another on helping to ensure that the dictates in the night economy action plans are followed and delivered on in a tangible way. One of those ways will be the upcoming report going to Economic and Community Development Committee in November. I think November 26th is the date, and that will be led by EDC, our division, reporting on what's been accomplished so far. And in line with that will be an update on the Good Neighbor Guide that we talked about earlier. And the Good Neighbor Guide, as some of you know, is a kind of a plain language amalgamation of a lot of detailed information for if you're a late night business, essentially, and all the things that are best practices and mandatory practices and good advice. And it's brought together in one spot with links to other parts of the city's rather sometimes labyrinthine and complicated website, including things like application forms and ways you can pay fees and the like. And so that will be updated. It is being updated by one of our colleagues in the Visitor Economy Office as we speak, and will be published electronically November, yeah? Mm-hmm. Yeah, coming right up. And then updated annually after that. So that's why I was saying I think that's probably a good place for that flow chart, should it come to fruition, around capacity limits. There is a night economy town hall, the second town hall. The first one took place in January, this last January at the Beanfield Centre. The second one will take place very likely in the third week of March or so, at a location as yet to be determined, and that will be an annual event thereafter. We've also been working quite closely with municipal licensing and standards on the noise bylaw, in helping to socialize it and making sure that it makes sense for and is feasible and workable from the perspective of the industry. There's still some work to do with municipal license standards on the noise monitoring process, particularly as it affects outdoor events. We may have a presentation from MLS at the next TMAC meeting in November with some detail around how that will look for outdoor event season in 2025, particularly with respect to fees and process for determining which events require noise monitoring, some of the logistics as well. Moving on to the idea of space. As many of you know, the lease from the It's Okay space on the city-owned building at 468 Queen Street West is due to expire in April of 2025. We've been working quite closely with corporate real estate management, CREM and Creatio, and other stakeholders on looking for a new location for that very successful and vibrant cultural hub, and ideally that something is found sooner than later so that they don't have a lag in their operations. before moving in. Similarly, as Lisa Zbitnew well knows, there's been a lot of activity across different levels of staff around looking for a new location for the Phoenix, and I think we're all aware of the timelines there, and frankly, the difficulty in finding a space that's appropriate. Size, ceiling height, location, proximity to transit, distance from residential, and all the other elements as well. But we are very committed to continuing to work cross-divisionally, internally, and with Lisa and her partners to identify something that's workable for the Phoenix. We get regularly, the music office does, inquiries from stakeholders of different sorts, sometimes event organizers, sometimes people who are looking to create new cultural space. And this dovetails very closely with what the team was just talking about with the project. Just looking for a handle on space that is sometimes in light industrial zones, sometimes on commercial main streets, but not zoned currently for entertainment use, sometimes in office space. We have millions and millions of square feet of untenanted office space with possibly more on the horizon. So we are hoping, perhaps through projects like this one, to find ways to unlock space like that, so that the zoning may be tweaked in order for space to be A or B, not just A or B. Sorry, A and B, not just A or B, as is currently the case. Lots of inquiries coming in, and we routinely refer those to our friends on the zoning team in the planning division to see what is the zoning at the address, what's permitted use, what would you have to do? Is it a committee of adjustment, or is it a totally sort of rezoning application that you'd have to go through? So this is a regular and pretty busy part of our week as well. Last couple of things I'll mention is we've worked quite closely with the team that Amy mentioned, the Career Development Task Team on TMAC, on a couple of events. That those of you who were at the Hart House event would remember it was quite a successful event, and we see that as a template. Of course, I want to add my thanks and congratulations to Jacqueline for doing such a good job. I've said before, I think the world lost a great wedding planner when Jacqueline went into municipal government, because boy, she had that down to a T. And we actually now see that as a template that we can use for future events. Some of which may be internal to the music communities, that, as we saw at Hart House, but some of them may also involve, as Marguerite knows, we're always looking for ways to engage the music community with other adjacent creative industries, screen-based media, game development, film, and the way that Hart House event worked, I think we can export and replicate with other events and other constituencies as well. We've got a couple of other things in the pipeline that we will be leaning on this Career Development Task Team to help with. One will be, Johnny kind of alluded to it as well, sort of a preparing the sector for opportunities. We understand that a lot of opportunities only come to organizations that are not-for-profits. So we are looking at putting on, it won't be us delivering the information, but we'll procure people who can do this. What are the pros and cons of becoming a not-for-profit? Is this for you? Is it right for you? What are the costs? What are the advantages? What are the benefits? What are the downsides? And maybe have a couple of people who have gone through that themselves. We're not certainly pushing that business model on anybody, but there are currently and for the foreseeable future, some advantages for certain opportunities if you are not-for-profit. And the last thing I'll leave you with is an interesting project that we've been involved with our friends at Community Music Schools of Toronto, which used to be called Regent Park School of Music, but is now a little bit more ubiquitous across Toronto. It's a project called Piano City. And through Piano City, it started with a little bit of seed funding from the music office, begun earlier this year. What it does is it seeks to rehome. We get a lot of calls, as does Kerner Hall, as does Community Music Schools of Toronto, like Edna needs her piano rehomed. who needs a piano, and of course nobody ever knows what to do with a beautiful upright piano, or sometimes even a baby grand. So this project will make use of an intermediary to rehome and retune that piano, and the fun part about it is that the destination is the third part of the partnership, which is Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation. So the pianos go to Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation facilities across the city. There are 2 in Scarborough currently. 12 pianos have been either retuned or rehomed or serviced and rehabilitated in these TSHC facilities. Several in Scarborough, several in Etobicoke, several in North York, and several in downtown Toronto. And there will be a phase 2 through which community music schools of Toronto instructors and students, and perhaps some artists from our City Hall Live database, will conduct some programming, some performances, and some work with the communities at these facilities to really sort of help bring these pianos to life and have them be fully used and fully enjoyed by the people who live there. And we're looking to continue this in 2025. I mean, it's not one of those things that is a structural, fundamental change to the music industry in Toronto, but it's a in the moment of the moment benefit for people who are sometimes neglected, frankly. And we're excited about this partnership, and thought you'd like to know about it as well. And also, like, as you know, we're often looking for things that don't just focus on the downtown core, but can take root in other parts of the city. So this is one of them. That's it for now. Any questions? Jeremy.
Who moves the piano?
Sorry?
Who's moving the piano?
Alex Hahn. And associates. Yeah, I'm not moving the piano. Yeah. I've got a van, Jeremy, a 40 Econoline van, and a dolly. No, the other part of the partnership is Alex Hahn, so they move and tune and maintain. We've got a certain amount of the budget to actually have the pianos maintained as well, so that they are playable, and if a key stops working, it gets repaired. It's a good question.
Any other questions? Looking online? Not, oh, yep. Sarah, over to you.
Just a comment. I'm not sure if they're still operating, but there was an organization, Mike, and you probably know them, that connected musicians with long-term care facilities. David Lemon started it in Vancouver and then brought it to Ontario, and I think it might have changed names over the course of the years, but I can do some digging there and see if we can make some connections if you are not already connected with them.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with it, Sarah. We can connect later, and I'd love the name. Thanks.
Okay.
Very good. Looking back online when the screen comes up. Not seeing hands. Looking in the room. Okay. Any speakers to the item? Councillor Morley.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you, Mike, for the great work and the good report. I want to echo also Sarah's suggestion of what a great opportunity. I met with a constituent yesterday who sort of connected someone they met in the neighborhood whose daughter is an aspiring pianist but doesn't have access to a piano. So she sort of opened her home and, created a bit of a relationship to make her piano, put her piano to good use and make sure this young person had an access to that. So I love the idea of not only partnering with TSHC, animating these spaces that really do unfortunately go more underutilized than we think. And as we bounce back from COVID, bring our folks together and, give them something to gather around, connecting young aspiring artists to, the access to those particular pieces of instruments that they might not be able to otherwise access, I feel like is a really beautiful additional incubator for our talent in the city. So thank you for that great work.
Thanks, and I should have thanked you at the beginning because your office provided the contact to, Toronto Seniors Community.
We're always happy to help. Thanks.
Yeah.
Love it. Wonderful. Okay, any other speakers? Okay, not seeing any. Motion to receive the item, is that okay? Motioned, all in favor? Great, carried. All right, and just kind of coming in under the 4 o'clock line here, our final item, MA 4.4, 25 meeting schedule. 4 dates, which is the terms of reference for TMAC, and the ones that we have proposed: Tuesday, February 18th, 2025, Thursday, May 15th, 2025, Tuesday, October 7th, 2025, and Monday, December 1st. I guess the sort of key takeaway just on this is the September meeting is shifting to October, and that's just sort of from feedback from some of our committee members. October is a little bit easier for scheduling than September. There's lots of sort of stuff carrying out through the summer, and so we wanted to revise that in the 25 dates. I'll let Mike provide some commentary as well.
Councillor Bradford, I just wanted to make sure that members know that we've scoped these dates for not having a conflict with any Toronto-based or even international major music industry events. So you can double check, but they should be okay. I did a pretty good jurisdictional scan here and elsewhere to you might be coming back on the plane the day before, but it won't be the day after, ideally.
Yeah, so February 18th, May 15th, October 7th, and December 1st. We'll,
no 8 a.m.
Yeah, no 8 a.m.s, 10 and 2. So does anyone have questions on that? We'll circulate that for everyone. Okay, any comments on that? Okay, then motion to receive this item. Okay, Hila, all in favor? Okay, excellent. Carried. All right, folks, that concludes our business for today. Thanks to Music Office and clerks and all of you for being a part of this. Really appreciate your input. Thanks for coming out. We'll see you next time.
Thanks everybody.
Thanks all.